Today we conclude Mark chapter 8, as I mentioned in a previous video, the pinnacle of this gospel, the telling question, who do people think Jesus is? Mark, under inspiration, he is the Christ. And this, according to church tradition, seems to be Peter's own eyewitness account, which is further backed up by the rest of the New Testament scriptures. So let's go ahead and read this account where Jesus now, towards the end of his ministry, at least 2 years into his ministry, crowds following him, enemies hating him, plotting even his own death. Now Jesus knows the gospel's gotten out enough that he can present his identity and set the stage for his sacrifice, fulfilling the role of the suffering servant, the Messiah's role, for the salvation of the world, especially for those who believe. Here's how it all plays out, this public confession, recognition of Jesus as the Christ. Mark tells us in verse 27 of Mark 8. So again, remember the 4 questions. Think, what strikes you about this? Where's the sin? Where's the grace? What did you learn to pray for? Heads of households lead the way. Jesus went away with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi. So that's way up north of the Sea of Galilee. And it's really Roman territory. So there's not a lot of crowds, not a lot of Jewish people. The Pharisees wouldn't be there to oppose him. So this is really his moment to be with the disciples. On the way, he asked his disciples, who do people say that I am? They told him, John the Baptist. Others say Elijah. Still others say one of the prophets. But who do you say I am? He asked. Peter answered him, you are the Christ. Then he warned them not to tell anyone about him. Jesus began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things, be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, the experts in the law, be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He was speaking plainly to them. Then Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But after turning around and looking at his disciples, Jesus rebuked Peter and said, get behind me, Satan. You do not have your mind set on the things of God, but on the things of men. And he called the crowd and his disciples together, and he said to them, if anyone wants to follow me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. After all, what good is it for a man to gain the whole world and yet forfeit his soul? Or what can a man give in exchange for his soul? In fact, whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will also be ashamed of him when he comes in his glory, the glory of the Father, and with the holy angels. This concludes chapter 8. Maybe some things to give thought to as you speak about what's striking in this text. Now that Jesus knows his disciples are beginning to see he's the Christ, and the Christ will be defined by the scriptures and not by the false ideas of the day, and especially as a suffering servant, right? Peter rebukes Jesus. Peter still can't imagine the Messiah suffering at the hands of the religious elite and the Romans and being crucified. So Jesus rightly rebukes Peter. And then he notes for everyone, so that this is perfectly clear, to follow after Jesus is not only to recognize that he would lay down his life and suffer, but in following after Jesus, there's a cross for anyone. There's a cross in this, that you are not to live for yourself. And that's what he means when he says, anyone who tries to save his life, you're going to lose it. If you live for yourself before God, you'll be condemned. But if you no longer live for yourself, but if you live, just as I'm living, to lay down my life for others, even for my enemies, then in faith, right? That understanding of the Messiah, how he saved us by grace. If you live a life of grace, you can't be selfish. You'll be selfless. Yes, you'll suffer. Yes, people will persecute you, but you'll do it. You'll lose your life, and Christ, for the sake of the gospel, you'll find it. And then he really challenges us. What good is it? What good is it to live for yourself? What good is it would be for Jesus if he would become king in Jerusalem and not die to save everyone? Then everyone would be condemned, and Jesus wouldn't be any kind of Messiah. He also would be condemned. What good would it be for him to earn the world but lose his life? Same is true for us. What good is it if we live for ourselves, as much of the world does, only to lose it all in the end, even our souls? So this is a real sobering truth, and yet Jesus is going to, the rest of the scriptures, is going to play it out to show that this is true. So as you think about those things, what struck you? Where's the sin? Where's the grace? And what did you learn to pray for in this life? God's blessings to you as you discuss these important truths with your family.